What really happened at Fatima 100 years ago? Occupying Till He Comes at Southwest Prophecy Ministries.
Welcome, friends. This is Dane Rome, your announcer for today's Last Days Beacon program. Thanks again for listening, and thanks for joining us. And just a reminder that these programs are supported by your gifts to this ministry. If you would like to contribute to this ongoing faith ministry, which deals with biblical prophecy and current events, simply go to our website to contribute. Our website address is www.swpm.us. You'll find a donate link on the homepage. The website address again is www.swpm.us. Thanks for your prayers and support for this ongoing faith ministry. We're doing a series of interviews with L.A. Marzulli regarding his new film entitled Fatima 2, Strange Phenomena. This film is explosive as it contains never-before-seen photographs from the 1917 events in Fatima, Portugal. Do these photographs prove that a disc-like object went over the crowd on the moors of Fatima almost 101 years ago? Does it validate many of the eyewitnesses who claim to have seen a dull silver disc? Well, let's join Dr. Snichter as he discusses this and many other amazing events that occurred at Fatima with researcher and filmmaker L.A. Marzulli.
Thank you, Dane. It is a great joy and privilege to have L.A. Marzulli on the program today and for the next few weeks to discuss his latest DVD entitled Fatima 2, Strange Phenomenon. I've had the privilege of interviewing L.A. several times in recent years and consider him to be a true friend and an encouragement to this ministry. He is also one of the leading experts today on the subject of UFOs, extraterrestrials, alien abductions, Nephilim, and modern apparitions. So, L.A., welcome to our show today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on, David.
Well, it's great to have you here all the way from the left coast. And I'm assuming that California has not slipped into the ocean since our last conversation.
To the best of my knowledge, David is still here, and we are still in an undisclosed location deep in the heart of the Santa Monica Mountains.
Well, that's great. Well, tell us, L.A., for those who are new to you and your ministry, tell us about your ministry. Certainly give us your web address, and then tell our listeners how you became interested in the subject of UFOs, extraterrestrials, etc.
Well, I'm working on my fourth independent film in the Watchmen Chronicles series. It's called The Mysterious Mound Builders. It'll be released right around Thanksgiving. It's a little over an hour long, and it deals with these mysterious mounds, some of them which are well over 390,000 tons, like Poverty Point, Louisiana. The largest earthen mound is Cahokia, found in the United States, and that's just outside of St. Louis. We've been to both of these sites. We have filmed all over the place. We're not done yet. This is probably at least a three-part series because, in my opinion, we are looking at the fingerprints of the supernatural. And I'm not, without giving away too much of the film, these mounds are all over the United States. As I just stated, there are 10,000 mounds alone in Ohio. And when Native Americans, First Nation people, are pressed on the point, well, who built the mounds? They basically say, we don't know who built them, or the giants built them, but we didn't build them. So we have a real disparity between what is taught in mainstream archaeological circles and what First Nation people are saying. And that's what we sort of delve into in the film, that there's an academic bias against anything supernatural. And we actually interviewed Mark Armitage, who was a professor down at CSU, and he, on a summer vacation, he went up and he dug out a Triceratops bone and Hell Creek. And when he did that, he came back and he found soft tissue in the dinosaur bone. And he published it in a secular journal and was promptly fired from his job. Well, he took it to court and settled out of court for 6 figures. And he comes on the record towards the end of the film, basically stating that there is an overarching academic bias throughout the scientific community and academia at large. Ben Stein's movie, of course, presses in on this. We take that angle basically because we're setting up film 2, 3, 4 regarding the mound builders. And so I'm working on that, very excited about it. We're not ready to do pre-sales on it yet, but the new UFO book is out, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed. And that's about 160 pages. Lots of very important information, in my opinion, is in the book. And, of course, people coming on the record through via emails to me, telling their encounters, their stories, what they've seen, everything from hybrids to UFOs. So it's a very, very much up-to-the-minute book on the whole UFO phenomenon. And I'm excited about that. That'll be released. We're actually doing a pre-sale now. You'll get, and you can go to lamarzulli.net. That's the website, lamarzulli.net, and you'll purchase UFO Disclosure book, but you'll also get for free my film on UFOs, In Their Own Words, UFOs Are Real, and my lecture at Prophecy Watchers Conference last year on Fatima. And I know, David, you'll be there also at Prophecy Watchers Conference coming up this October. Looking forward to that.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it as well, and I'm sure I will be attending your seminars as well. I'm sure you'll be doing a fresh seminar on Fatima 2, the research that you just published in your sequel to Fatima 1 that you published last year.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I will be speaking specifically on Fatima 2, but also tying that into modern-day apparitions and why we need to be alarmed at what is going on and wary of what is going on.
Well, we're going to be talking about just that in these the series of interviews. So we're going to be talking in this series of interviews about a subject that, to my knowledge, has not received much notice or analysis by evangelical Christians, and that is the subject known as the miracle of Fatima, or some have called it the miracle of the sun. I remember through the years receiving Catholic literature regarding this event. They have made a big deal of Fatima. Of course, as you know, they have a large shrine at Fatima where the faithful come from all over the world to do pilgrimage. But in terms of evangelical attention or analysis, as far as I know, you are a pioneer in this regard, and so I commend you for doing that. My first question, yes, go ahead.
No, I appreciate the kudos, and you're right. Evangelicals, many of them have not really looked at it. The late Jim Tetlow was really, and I could be wrong here, but Tetlow was one of the few that actually delved into Marian apparitions and so-called sun miracles. So he's no longer with us. He's gone into glory. But, I salute Jim. He was a great researcher, and wish he was still around.
I think perhaps there's a tendency for evangelicals or Christians to kind of have a hands-off attitude toward Catholic traditions and shrines, etc., and not, how should we say, analyze them critically. So let me ask you, why did you decide to go to Fatima, Portugal, to investigate what happened there?
Well, I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit. I've always believed, having studied Fatima now for, well over 15 years and reading a lot of different literature on it, that it was a UFO event. It had nothing to do with what we hear the party line is, essentially. There's really nothing to do with what the party line is and what we've heard for the last 101 years. And I realize that can cause a lot of people some discomfort. It can make people think that I'm bashing Catholics. I'm not. In fact, there's a caveat in the beginning of the film when we talked about this, when you interviewed me about Fatima 1, where I said millions of people come to Fatima every year. millions of Muslims go to encircle the Kaaba stone. Millions of Hindus celebrate Guru Puja in India, and millions of Buddhists worship at thousands of temples all over Asia. So people have the right to believe what they want to believe, and we're not here to disparage anyone's belief system. That's not what the film is about. The film does, however, drill into the miracle of the sun, number one, and in Fatima 2, it drills into the strange phenomena which happened while the so-called miracle of the sun was actually taking place. And we also get into the mysterious fourth witness, which was completely under the radar. No one knew about her at all. And I'm sure you'll ask me about that a little bit later. So the reason why I'm interested in this is because it sets, and I'm tipping my hand here. Why I take umbrage with this whole Fatima apparition is twofold. The first is that it sets Mary up as coming back and appearing over these places. And I don't think Mary the Bible would be doing that, number one. I just don't. I'm not, again, people can believe what they want to believe, but in my opinion, Mary the Bible is not the Queen of Heaven. And while she's the God bearer, as she says in the Magnificat, I'm a sinner. I'm in need of salvation. So I don't believe it's Mary that's appearing anywhere to anybody, number one. Number two, the acceptance of Fatima, which was huge, which is actually in some ways bigger than Lourdes and all these other places. Fatima set a precedent to accept so-called sun miracles and apparitions, which continue up to the present day. And that's why I made the films, because we are told in the biblical prophetic narrative that Satan can appear as an angel of light. We're told that right there. And we're also told to test the spirits. So when you delve into the literature, no one's testing anything. People just assume, oh, it's an apparition. It must be Mary. Who else can it be? And this is how it comes down to us 101 years later. And so we were at the sanctuary last July, not 2018, 2017. We were there for 2 days at Fatima in the sanctuary. And when I got there, I was just completely bowled over by how dialed in it is. They have security, there's sacred music. What I mean by that, classic, orchestral, beautiful music wafting through the trees. And thousands of pilgrims were there on July 13th, which is one of the anniversaries of the so-called apparitions. And they had this statue of Mary, which is about 4 feet high, on a bed of roses being paraded through the square, which is huge. You can fit 1 million people in the square in front of the cathedral. I mean, it's a really huge area. And I looked at my wife and said, well, we're taking Mary off the table. And so we did. We never go after who the entity is, per se. We never attack Mary the Bible. We just don't do that for what people believe. We do go after, in the first episode, the miracle of the sun. And we really get down into that, what people saw, what the witnesses say they saw. And that's why it's important for evangelicals to understand. I'll reiterate that Fatima set a precedent to accept so-called sun miracles and apparition sites that continue right up until modernity, right till the present day. In 2009, there was a apparition over a Coptic church in Egypt, seen by thousands of people. You got the Zaytun apparitions that happened, I think, in the late 60s, early 70s, around that time. You've got apparitions that happened, sun miracles that happened in Knock, Ireland in 2017. And so at many of these places that we have on film, when we actually do a compilation in Fatima 2 at the end of the film and show people what's going on, you hear the absolute hysteria of the crowd. And this is what I take umbrage with, David, because no one's testing the spirits. No one's rebuking first and asking questions later. People are just accepting this phenomenon as something from God. And we're told that, Satan will come with all signs and lying wonders, especially in the last days. And that's what I think we're looking at. It is not, with all due respect to people who believe in the Fatima apparitions, it was not Mary the Bible. It is a lying sign and wonder, in my opinion. And I realize that statement alone can ruffle a lot of feathers, and we get people that will write me, and I'll basically ask them, well, have you watched the film? Well, no, it doesn't work that way. You need to see the film before you start criticizing what I'm doing here. Because if you haven't seen the film, then you don't know what you're talking about. And I back it up with witnesses, and everything that we draw from is from the source material for the film is from the handwritten documents from 1917. So, that's why I made the film, and I stand by the investigation and what we uncovered, and I think it's extremely important to evangelicals. And let me just end by saying this, that on the History Channel, there was a show about the last pope, and in that, they started talking about the secrets of Fatima and the third secret and all this other stuff. There are no secrets of Fatima. All that comes much, much later, 1928, and then from then on, that's where we hear about the so-called secrets. You go back to the 1917 handwritten documents, there are no secrets. There are no secrets. So there's a disparity between what people think happened and what I believe really happened.
Now, most of the attention, I think, at the popular level regarding the miracle of Fatima has to do with the events that took place on October 13th, 1917, but there were actually significant events that led up to that and that resulted in this massive crowd of 70,000 people gathered on the moors outside of Fatima on that day. So what were the events that led up to and promoted the so-called miracle of Fatima?
Well, there were several. This is why it's very complex, and people need to understand that it's not the simple storyline that we get in some Cecil B. DeMille film that was created in the 50s. I don't even know who did it, but there was a film about Fatima in the 50s, which I saw as a kid, and it basically recreates the party line. What is not included in that film, and what most people don't understand, a group of mediums. Well, first of all, let me give you the backstory. World War I is raging throughout Europe. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead. Portugal is invested in the war. Okay? So World War I is raging, tumultuous time. At the same time World War I is happening, you've got the Bolshevik Revolution, where the Tsar is about to be overthrown, and you're going to get decades of the communist rule in what becomes Soviet-era Russia, including 70 million people perishing in the gulags, according to Alexander Solzhenitsyn. So much for communism, comrade. You get out of line and you wind up in the gulag and you're dead. So that's because the state will decide who has the right to live and who will die. Where here in a democracy, specifically in our republic, we have God-given rights, and those are inalienable, given by God, not given by the state. So there's a real, again, disparity between ideology. And unfortunately, most young people today have no idea what the difference really is. And so they're looking for, like Bernie Sanders and others of his ilk, for the socialistic free stuff. The problem is there is no free stuff, and the government can't ever provide it. Somebody's paying for it. And so when Ocasio-Cortez stands up and says, we're going to tax the rich, that's their plan all the time. And I realize I'm digressing here, but the plan is always, well, we'll just tax the rich more. Pretty soon, there is no more rich. The rich shut down the plants. They move offshore. They hide their money. They do whatever. And the tax base runs out. But in the meantime, small businesses go out of business, and lots of bottom rung employees that are low-paying wages, not highly skilled wages, or not highly skilled jobs, they're the first to go. This is why we have the homeless epidemic on the streets of America, because during the Obama administration, hundreds of thousands of people were let go because of the onerous tax burden. So the socialistic agenda never works and never will. Circling back, the rise of communism in 1917 sent a shockwave throughout Europe. This is how Hitler was able to rise to power, blaming all the guilds and all the ills of the world on the Jews and the communists. He burned the burning of the Reichstag, which of course was done by the Nazis themselves, was blamed blamed on a communist. So that's sort of the backdrop. In the meantime, in the halls of power in England, the Balfour Declaration, which would eventually lead to the establishment of Israel as a modern-day state, is being looked at. So it's a very charged, tumultuous window of time in 1917, enter a group of psychics in Portugal who, through the occult technique of automatic writing, where they go into a trance and the hand moves and an entity possesses the person. It's not full possession, but it's possession for a period of time. And they're in a trance and they allow themselves to be taken over by an entity, obviously a demon. And that demon begins to write from right to left, backwards. And the only way you could read it was through a mirror, holding the message up to a mirror. But it signed its name in left to right, the way normal human beings write in the English language. And it's signed it Stella Matutina, the bright morning star, another name for the fallen one, and the i.e. Satan. And the message basically stated that something wondrous would happen on May 13th, 1917 in Fatima, Portugal. And sure enough, something wondrous does. But where's the source from that? It's demonic. It's mediumship, which we're told is forbidden to us. So you've got a group of occultists, mediums, telling us that something wondrous is going to happen on May 13th. And this entity does appear to the three children, Lucia, who was 10, Francisco, 9, and Jacinta, who was 7, and gives them something to eat and drink. All three children eat, but only Lucia and Jacinta drink. So Francisco, because he did not drink, was never able to hear the entity. He saw her, but never could hear what she had to say. So again, it's extremely complex. The children see this entity. They ask her, where are you from? She just points to the sky. She never, ever, ever says, I am Mary of the Bible. She never says that. It's not in the handwritten 1917 documents. It's just not there.
So it appears that the tumultuous time with the cataclysm of World War I, as well as the tumult of the Bolshevik Revolution, perhaps predisposed the people, let's say in Portugal, the peasant people, to be looking for some kind of a sign that would bring them some sense of comfort and hope. So do you think that might have been part of why they were predisposed when they saw the events, the phenomenon of October 13th, to default to their religious background and to impose their Catholicism on that phenomenon? Is that what you're saying?
Basically, yes. Fatima happens with the backdrop of World War I raging and the Bolshevik Revolution. So, again, it's a very tumultuous time. Enter this entity. And, again, when you actually read the documents from 1917, and I've read some of them, but I've talked to people and interviewed people in the film that have spent a lot of time in the archives, specifically Pina de Armada. Although she passed away in 2014, I was able to interview her daughter, Frederica Claro de Armada. And, her mother was allowed access to the archives. And so she was poring over the records, and she just read the papers and into a tape recorder. And then later on, she could listen to them. And that's how she was able to really glean the information that she came up with, which was the source material for the books. So we have two Fatimas. We have the Fatima that people think that they know, which it's Mary, the Bible, and the phenomena that happened that day, the sun spun and all this stuff. And we've got what I believe is the actual real Fatima, which is a harbinger of deception, which was a UFO event. But the backdrop for all this, again, is a very charged atmosphere, very unstable, tumultuous, tenuous, and that's why people rush to it. They were looking for answers.
Yes, when people are desperate, they do tend to be gullible and perhaps more susceptible to deception. And certainly they immediately attached a meaning to these events and phenomenon that would bring them a sense of comfort and hope. And since Catholicism is a Marianite religion that exalts Mary, I can understand how they would immediately attach these unexplainable phenomenon to something to them which was explainable, which was an apparition or an appearance of Mary. Well, we're going to pause right there. I think we're out of time for today. And so, L.A., thanks for joining me for today's introductory show. We will continue this intriguing discussion on Fatima 2, Strange Phenomenon, next week. But for now, our announcer, Dane Rome, will share how you may obtain a copy of this fascinating DVD, as well as 2 other amazing and recent films by L.A. Marzulli.
Thank you, Dr. Schnitker. Today, we're offering an amazing combination of films from L.A. Marzulli. Not only are we offering Fatima 2, Strange Phenomenon, but we're also offering 2 additional films from the Watchmen Chronicles series. These films are Fatima 1, Miracle of the Sun, or A Harbinger of Deception. And that's not all. We're also including, in their own words, UFOs are real. We're offering all 3 videos for the unbelievable gift offer of $24.95 plus $6 for shipping and handling. This is a regular $59.97 value for the amazing price of $24.95. To order this 3-pack video combo, go to our website, www.swpm.us, and click on the slider on the homepage. The website address is www.swpm.us. And please join us again next week for our next program brought to you by Southwest Prophecy Ministries. Until then, this is your announcer, Dane Rome, saying thanks for listening.